Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome you today. I thank y'all for being here with us. First of all, I'm Bryan Shaw, the Chairman of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. With me today are Commissioner Carlos Rubinstein, Commissioner Toby Baker, and it's our pleasure to be here today and share what you may not realize. This is our 21st annual Environmental Trade Fair and Conference. So it's in some way, yeah, there you go. Is there anyone who's been to all 21 of these? There's a couple of hands that are whether in jest or not. But it is our pleasure to first of all welcome you here, and it's a great joy for us to be able to meet with our environmental colleagues and to see you again, to see you in this venue and others. And I think it's useful to be able to come together and talk about and share some of the different issues that are important to each of us. So I thank you for being here. I hope this is a conference that is meaningful for you. It certainly has already been for me. I'd like at this time to encourage you to sit back and listen. I want to introduce our Director of Communications, Mr. Andy Sines, will come forward and we'll begin the program.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see everyone. You know, there's an old saying that basically says it's not bragging if you're telling the truth. And so with that in mind, I hope you'll let us brag just a little bit this afternoon. Because like many of you in this room, all of us at the TCEQ, we're very proud of our state. You know, these have been tough times for our great nation. The recession has taken its toll on the national economy, but Texas has weathered the storm better than most. Our very strong economy and our robust job creation climate has put Texas at the top of a lot of lists. Home starts, job creation, exports. These charts provided by the governor's office track some of those economic indicators. One of the most impressive numbers on that chart, it's hard for you to see, but it's at the top, and it says in the past 2 years, 38% of all the jobs created in this country were created right here in Texas. 38%. You can clap, it's fine. The Texas model is being envied and it's being copied across the country because it is working. What is remarkable to us is in this same time frame, even with all of the tremendous growth that our state has accepted, we're also leading the country in the area of environmental protection. We're breathing the cleanest air we've had in Texas in the past 10 years. You can clap, that's fine. We've got cleaner water. We're safely disposing of all of our waste. We're using the latest scientific technology available and the most skilled workforce of environmental professionals in the state to take care of Texas. To put it simply, Texas leads the way.
My fellow Texans, our economy is growing.
We've worked very hard at making Texas very attractive.
We embrace a can-do culture.
We basically aren't choosing between a strong economy or a strong environment.
Balance allows for new opportunities, but at the same time allows for people to have clean air and clean water and get out and enjoy the outdoors.
We lowered ozone levels by 23% between 2000 and 2011. We are a testament to the power of freedom, to the entrepreneurial spirit unleashed from government interference.
The TCEQ has the largest ambient air monitoring network in the country. We collect over 7 million data points a year, and we look at that data continually, and we're always seeing improvements. The monitors that we're putting in, especially up in the Barnett Shale, take an air sample every hour, and we monitor it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
You also see that on our non-vehicle emissions of NOx, for example, we've had about a 60% reduction in the last 10 years.
We are probably the leaders in the United States in using infrared technology, taking cameras in and being able to pinpoint emissions right at their source.
We have 12 cameras in operation statewide right now. I don't know of any other state that is using this technology as extensively as Texas.
Repeatedly, Texas comes up as a model of how to do things right. We got several requests from other states to come to their state to show them how it is that we're using that new technology, and the latest one that we went to was Puerto Rico.
We have some really innovative programs. One is TERP, and that is where we go in and replace old diesel engines with new ones through a grant process.
This program retrofits older diesel buses. That improves the air quality right around the bus and inside the bus. It's a great example of a program that impacts the lives of people directly, especially children.
And no matter how you measure it, air quality has vastly improved in Texas, even while we've had all this growth.
And part of what we've seen on top of that increased growth of the number of Texans coming in is we've also seen unprecedented drought.
Working with our local, state, and federal partners, we looked at how can we improve our response, provide that rapid response to different disasters or one large-scale disaster. So what we did is we rolled out the disaster response strike team concept, and that's comprised of multiple teams located throughout the state that gives us the ability to mobilize equipment and people quickly to either a large-scale disaster or even multiple disasters.
We also have what amounts to a small army that goes out and helps protect the environment. We have 16 regional offices. We have over 2,700 employees.
They go out and do literally thousands of investigations each year at facilities to ensure compliance with environmental regulations.
So if we're going to have a regulatory structure where we have measurable environmental benefits at the end, but it's also predictable. It's not something that we change all the time.
Forbes.com and CNBC has named Texas as the #1 business economy in the U.S.
When companies like Apple are looking to expand in a place like Texas, you know that quality of life is part of that decision.
Because of the model that we've established.
Being innovative, allowing for flexibility, and working to find real environmental solutions.
You can't help but be bullish on the future of Texas.
We stand as a national example that hard work can breed success. Thank you, God bless you, and through you, may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.
Thank you. We'd like to continue this discussion with our commissioner so that we can get into some of the details of some of the things we saw in the video. Chairman, let me start with you. You're a professor by trade, and you always talk about how science and technology will help us do our job better. That if we listen to science, we listen to technology, that we can find the source of the problem so that we're not chasing the wrong rabbit. What does chasing rabbits have to do with this?
Thank you. You've hit on one of my favorite topics. You know, as a scientist by training, it fits very well for me because I'm very comfortable with the process we employ here at TCEQ. And I think you hear this theme throughout the discussion you've seen in the video, is we recognize that it's not just our role to do something that we then pat ourselves on the back and say, we're doing something, we're trying. But instead, we insist that because we have great resources, we have the best staff in the world, we have the greatest technical staff of any agency, environmental agency, bar none. We have an opportunity and I think an obligation, and we've capitalized on that, where we employ that scientific process. We go out and see what things we do that will actually improve the condition, not just something so we can say, well, we've strengthened the standard, we've done X, Y, and Z, but instead, I think I like to describe it as we do our homework so that at the end of the day, we can look the different stakeholders in the eye, and that be the Texans across the state, that be the regulated community and the environmental community, and we can say these regulations are going to make a difference, and you should have a reasonable expectation that it's going to do what we say it's going to do, and that we've done our homework to try to avoid the unintended consequences which often accompany regulations that are not well thought out. And so by employing that, you see a state where we do have a strong economy because of and along with the fact that we have a strong environment, because we realize we have to have both, and if we follow that philosophy, we can have both. And Texas is an example that we do indeed have that success of pursuing environmental and economic goals in harmony.
And obviously it's working here in Texas.
It's working.
Commissioner Rubinstein, we didn't talk about it this much this video. We spent a lot of time last year talking about water. This economy is not going to go forward if we don't solve the water problem. Cities are not going to grow, businesses can't operate, farmers and ranchers, as you know from the valley, they're not going to be able to take care of their crops or their animals. What do we do to solve the water problem?
Well, I think as we did last year, one of the things that I like the best is we can celebrate the ingenuity that exists in Texas. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to highlight as to how is it the different parts of the state are responding to their water needs. You go over to the part of the country where Chairman Shaw comes from, the Panhandle, and they understand scarcity of water. But I tell you, you come up with the greatest ideas on how to address the problem from there. The Colorado Regional Municipal Water District, a perfect example. They've been relying for a long time on 3 lakes that today are relatively empty. You couldn't get water out of them if you wanted to. But they didn't rest on that. They went out and they found ways to better reuse their water, better blend whatever groundwater they have with whatever return water that they may be able to produce. They have a state-of-the-art facility that I think serves as a model not only for the Panhandle, but for other parts of the state as well. And so they're meeting their demands with the ingenuity that they've put in place. You go down to the valley where Andy and I are from, and you look at the work that they've done in improving the conveyance of water, and more importantly, how is it that you're going to apply the water to farmland to where you actually end up using less water, but you end up even increasing the yields. And Chairman Shaw did a lot of work of that early on in his career as well, and so we both understand that. Go down south just a couple of miles on 35 and go to San Antonio. And what a perfect example that is. You know, we honored them a couple of years ago. San Antonio has had to rely on the same amount of water for the longest time. They shared with us 2 years ago. They've had a 67% increase in population. Their water resources have not increased, and yet they've been able to meet that demand through ingenuity. And what they've done is they've actually reduced, in a way that we all need to commend, their per capita consumption of water. We can go anywhere in Texas and point to several examples like this. So that is one way of doing it. I also am extremely proud of the work that L'Oreal Stepney, who was kind enough to join me for lunch today, and her staff have done in responding to the drought. Devastating drought in 2011 and going forward. But the flexibility that they've shown in responding to the needs of the communities that are running out of water is something that all three of us applaud. These are the type of things we need to do. Certainly the discussion that's being had downtown about how we're going to manage our growth with the state water plan and putting it in play, extremely critical. Those are just a few examples.
Commissioner Baker, you came to us from the governor's office where you were a policy advisor to Governor Perry. You must have been in several of those meetings with companies that wanted to come to Texas to establish their businesses or to expand. What was important to them? It was not obviously not just the tax structure or the federal regulations. A lot of it had to do with quality of life?
Yes, exactly. I think that one of the messages going outside of Texas, one of the things that we try to overcome is this idea that Texas is an old oil and gas state and everything's dirty and it's all about the money. And the reality is we're so far from that old stereotype now that everywhere I go, I try to share the message that actually we are leading the country in what we've done with our clean air over the last 10 years. We go back and forth, I think, with Georgia, but we are right up there at the top on what we've done as far as getting our ozone under control. And that comes from the governor's leadership and exactly this idea of, you know, I referred to it as a balance. I think balance is not exactly the right word, because when you talk about balance, you think that maybe you're giving up something for something else. The reality is that there's a belief, and it starts with the governor, that we can actually have both in the state of Texas, that we can have a strong economy and a clean environment at the same time. And we do that through regulations that are predictable and set. So when a company comes here, they know exactly what the rules are, and they know that those rules are not going to change in the middle of the game. And so they come here because they know they can make an investment and that they can see their project through to the end. I think what you'll see is Texas continuing going down that exact same road, finding this place where we do continue to have a clean environment and a strong economy, and because of that, it allows quality of life to flourish, and it attracts companies like Apple to come here because they know that their folks are not only going to get moved to the greatest state in the union, but they're also going to get clean air and good jobs.
We also get a knock that all we have is minimum wage jobs. One of those charts showed that's not true. A lot of the jobs that are being offered in Texas are skilled jobs by a lot of these large companies. What'd you say?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, if you just look at the companies that have moved here and the ones that have expanded here over the last 5-10 years, you're not talking about minimum wage jobs. You're talking about jobs that are revolving around technology, jobs that are revolving around manufacturing, and jobs that have impacts well beyond the borders of this state.
We're going to open this up to the floor. We've got about 9 or 10 minutes to ask a couple of questions from the audience before we wrap up the session and bring you just a couple of other things. But we have 3 microphones in the audience, one to the right, one in the back, and one on the left side. So we're going to open it up. If you could just tell us your name and where you're from, and then we'd be happy to bring a microphone over to you. I think we have one right in the front.
Hi, how are you doing? My name is Tony Quintanilla. I'm from El Paso, Texas. And my question is basically about the drought. As drought continues, water is going to continue to be an issue in Texas. What is your agency doing to ensure Texas is going to continue to get its fair share of water? And since I live in El Paso, I'm concerned internationally and also with New Mexico.
That sounds like a Carlos Rubinstein question.
I appreciate your question, and I share your concerns. And you're right, El Paso signifies one area where this is extremely critical. There's a lot of parts to your question. What are we doing with the drought? Again, the type of work that we've been doing in assessing the state of whether or not additional water masters are needed. More importantly, the ability to respond to senior calls and the work that staff has done from going where it used to take 41 days on average to get to an emergency order. Now the last one took us 4 days to get to. But also working with communities that are running out of water. Groesbeck is one, Robert Lee is another, and being able to expedite emergency interconnection and permitting issues for them is a way of addressing the drought. The second part to your question is one that's very near and dear to my heart is, what are we doing with intrastate and international issues on water? I'll start with the one that is more critical to you in El Paso. We have a tortured history with water in New Mexico. It is one that we've been pursuing for a long time, and you think that we're getting to a point where we can address it and something changes. More recently, the state of New Mexico, unfortunately, started 2 very aggressive court cases that directly challenge the water that we're entitled to and the water that you count on to meet your needs in El Paso. And because of those court challenges, we were faced with the decision as to we need to finally resolve the issue. And so in January of this year, working through the governor's office and the attorney general's office, we filed a court case in the Supreme Court challenging the way that New Mexico is interpreting and honoring its obligations to Texas under the Rio Grande Compact. We expect the Supreme Court to make a decision on that issue here soon as to whether they're going to take it or not and appoint a special master. Why is it critical to El Paso in that area? Well, folks, El Paso relies to meet 50% of its water needs from the Rio Grande. And the only time that they get that water is when we're actually irrigating and we're getting water out of Elfin Butte. If that water, because of man's activities, is hampered in New Mexico, then El Paso doesn't have that water with which not only to meet its needs, but also to grow economically. The second issue, and one that is important to those of us that are from the valley, it's unfortunate that Mexico appears to once again decide that it does not want to honor its obligations under the 1944 treaty. They've done this before. We've solved it before. In 2005, we had reached an agreement that got us all our water back and a path forward on how to avoid the situation in the future. Regrettably, we're exactly back to where we were in 1992, 1993. Mexico has an obligation to deliver water to the United States in an amount of around 350,000 acre-feet a year. In return for that, the United States delivers 5 times that amount of water to Mexico. We have never failed to deliver that water in the Colorado to them. And yet, repeatedly, unfortunately, Mexico seems to have trouble in meeting their obligation. And what's even more difficult to us now is they owe us 450,000 acre-feet right now, and yet they have one reservoir on the Conchos, the one that's closest to the Rio Grande, the Luis Leon. They're storing water in their flood capacity. It is over-conservation. So it's unconscionable to us to understand, or try to understand, why is it that they owe us water, and yet they can keep water in one of their reservoirs in the flood pool. What are we doing about it? International issues belong with the federal government. We cannot deal with Mexico directly. We're at the table, but we're not the negotiating party. We've relied on the International Boundary and Water Commission to try to resolve this issue. We've gotten nowhere. Water has not come to the valley. We rely on the State Department, and regrettably here lately I've been having to say more often than not that maybe we need to go to the United States State Department and remind them that they represent the United States. So we continue on those very tough issues. They are absolutely critical, not only for our needs today, but for our ability to continue to grow the state.
Well said. I could echo everything he said, and clearly those are some of the most pressing issues. And statewide, we're feeling the impacts of the drought, and these are issues that are somewhat man-made that are exacerbating that, which is why they're so critical that we resolve them quickly.
Any other quick questions? We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. One more quick question from the audience. It's pretty rare we have all these 3 guys up here together. Then they're allowed to speak on issues. So, quick question.
There?
I have one in the back,
Yeah,
very back.
Just a real quick question. In Houston on Saturday had 5 to 7 inches of rain in a very short time frame. All of this water appears to be running off and headed to the Gulf of Mexico. And I've heard rumors that the Trinity River, or Dallas is capturing a lot of the Trinity River runoff and using it up there. Are there any thoughts about treating that water or capturing the water from runoff from Houston?
Well, I'll address it a couple ways. One is you correctly point out that a number of municipalities especially are being very creative in looking at potential for reusing water and basically ensuring that water gets used as efficiently as possible. The real challenges with water is about location. And so you could capture the water in Houston, but then you've got to get it somewhere else to use it. And so I'm not saying that it won't happen there. I'm just saying that one of the real challenges we face is the lack of water in certain parts of the state where you need it in the quantities you need it, and most everything you look at, whether it's desalination of water or whether it's pumping water, requires a lot of hurdles, some of which are building pipelines and some of which are paying for the energy to transport that water. But certainly we're going to see more, as we've seen in various industries, including the oil and gas exploration, where they're looking at using that water more efficiently, recycle, reuse, reclaiming water. And so we're seeing more and more of that. Commissioner Rubinstein mentioned out in West Texas some of the leadership in recognizing that perhaps we need to think about, is it absolutely required that we put that water into a creek or river before we pull it back out again and treat it and treat it to drinking water standards? Maybe you can reuse that water a little closer to the source and save some of the pumping costs, as well as be able to use that water more efficiently and reduce our consumptive use, to where we're able to have more water in the flow for irrigation, for the environment, and for other uses downstream.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Your question, we're actually doing some of that already. In fact, just before we got up here for lunch, I was talking to Kelly Ryla, and she has that exact same issue today in the Rio Grande Valley, where they also got a lot of rain, and there's a slug of water coming down, and it's going to last a couple of days. And so can we do something to allow the irrigation districts to capture that water and store it, because we know it's going to be dry next week? And so we do that. But the other issue that we also have to deal with is, it's easy to say, let's capture the water and store it. Anytime you capture water anywhere, if it's in the wrong place, as the chairman just stated, and it's going to sit there, it's going to evaporate. And when it does that, the salinity increases on that water. And while it was really good to capture it, you may get it to a salinity level that you can't then use it. And so we need to balance all these issues out. We try to take advantage of it as much as we can. The executive director, Zach Kovar, in his last emergency order that impacted the Brazos, came up with exactly this way of managing water. While we had to respond to the drought, we had to curtail water use. He understood that there'll be times when we get this beneficial rain. And by all means, let's make sure that we put as much of that water to beneficial use when it's available, and we applaud him for those efforts as well.
I think another way of stating that is all options have to be on the table. If this drought has taught us nothing else, it's that we clearly need to look at all options that are plausible and some that don't even seem plausible, and make sure we let technologies take us to a point where we can find creative ways to resolve our water needs. A lot of that's going to be with more efficient use, some of the conservation, more efficient methods of irrigation, more efficient uses in the household and what have you. Some of that's going to be developing new sources, both groundwater and surface water. And by putting everything on the table, we can let the best opportunities and options float to the top, on top of water, and so that we can indeed resolve the issue most cost effectively.
Any more quick questions before we try to wrap up and move towards the afternoon session? Commissioner Baker, you've been here a year now. You got here last year. You clap, it's fine.
Barely.
By the way, the most important thing the legislature did was they confirmed you. 30 was a unanimous vote. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Has your outlook about our agency, the environment, balance, has your outlook changed in that first year that you've been here?
I think my outlook has changed in that I'm used to, before I came to this job, I was used to doing most things on my own, relying on my own research, my own resources as far as even booking trips, to represent the state. And one of the things I've quickly learned at TCEQ is that I can rely on the staff here. And I knew that before, because we, in the governor's office, we'd call over on a regular basis and talk to the technical staff about what was going on. But until you actually get over here and you're having to make decisions based on what the staff research tells you, you really don't know how good the staff is until you get here. And I will say that I will put the staff at TCEQ up against any environmental agency in the world. We have the expertise, and we have the best staff that I think you could have. So sort of giving up the self-reliance portion and shifting over to be able to rely on the staff was sort of tough at the beginning, but I think that I would rather not have any other staff helping me make the decisions that I have to make.
It's good to have you here, definitely.
Thanks.
Before we send you back to classes, we did want to do just 2 quick things. Has anybody here heard of our program called Take Care of Texas? Raise your hand. Take Care of Texas? Yeah. It's a personal responsibility campaign that the agency does. It's really quick, easy things that we can recommend to folks, things they can do at home, things they could do at the office to keep Texas clean. Well, this summer, we're going to kind of ramp up that program a little bit more. We are partnering with our sister agency, Texas Parks and Wildlife, with a brand new campaign. And this summer, we will lay it out June, July, and August. You're going to see new television and radio ads. We also partnered with our country recording artist, Kevin Fowler, to get together with us to try to put a new spin on this campaign. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just got out of the recording studio. We are very happy that you will be the very first audience in Texas to preview our brand new public service announcement, Take Care of Texas, and our friend, Kevin Fowler.
You gotta take care of Texas, it's the only one we got. If you're way up in Lubbock or down in Lukenbach, you gotta conserve water, keep the air clean. Take care of Texas, don't you know what I mean, y'all?
Kevin Fowler here. Texas has clean air, rivers, and lakes. Let's get outdoors and enjoy them. Visit takecareoftexas.org, pledge to help keep it that way, and we'll send you a free Texas State Park Guide.
You gotta take care of Texas, it's the only one we got.
Pretty cool, huh? You're going to hear it a lot this summer. It's already in my head. I hear it at night. Very, very catchy. We have Kevin Fowler posters available down in the trade fair area in the center part of where all the booths are. We'd be happy to give you a brand new Kevin Fowler poster that we just got. And over the summer, we encourage you to go to this website and make a pledge. And if you do that, we will send you a free parks guide, like Kevin just said. The second thing that we wanted to mention before we let you all go is tomorrow night here in this very same room, we will honor the 2013 Texas Environmental Excellence Award winners. These are the 10 most outstanding environmental projects in Texas as designated by Governor Perry and our commissioners. We have some outstanding winners again. We get lucky every year. We've got some great winners. We want to show you a quick preview of some of our winners.
This is my love, this is my passion.
And I'm proud to work for a company that has excellent environmental stewardship.
He told his mother, you know what, I just want to do something to help the environment.
I'm glad people are joining my club and they're having fun.
People want to get involved with this movement that's happening. It's not so much a movement anymore, it's becoming a lifestyle.
About 50% of this reservoir was covered with hydrilla.
We wanted to institute a program where we could transplant native aquatic plants.
And that's where we are today, getting the native plants reestablished.
Ecosystem enhancement.
Constantly looking for opportunities there to make it a little bit above and beyond what's the minimum required.
This is all mined out land. The biggest single comment is, I can't believe this was mined once.
We went through a complete overhaul of our finish shop processes.
Being environmentally conscious is good for business, it's good for our customers, and overall it's good for efficiency.
You've got to design water supplies for drought conditions, not the condition when rivers are full.
It is a finite resource, it is limited, and if not managed correctly, you could run out.
It's hit and miss where you can find water. So the water sources are right around this creek. It's real important.
It's very rare for any water body to be delisted from the impaired list, so that's an accomplishment.
We don't see muddy water here anymore. It's wonderful.
You know, I think it's a beautiful cemetery,
No, it doesn't have the lush green grass, but that's not the environment we're in.
Almost all of us are veterans, so it's like veteran taking care of veterans. It's very, it's personal.
This state of Texas that is so large and so beautiful.
It's almost beyond words.
How about a round of applause for all of our winners this year? Outstanding projects. We are already looking for next year's winners. If you know of a project, if you're doing a project and you'd like to apply or nominate yourself or one of your neighbors, just go to this website, www.tea.org. You can do it all online. Folks, thank you so much for coming this afternoon, for your excellent questions, for your time and attention. We hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and remember to take care of Texas because it's the only one we've got, y'all. Have a good afternoon.